uncertainty, and pivotal shifts, traps to be avoided, right choices to be made. Join me, Tian, for answers from the Swiss Alps with brilliant minds and key players. A world in change. A World Insight special on the World Economic Forum 2019. Hello and welcome to A World in Change, a special program of World Insight with me, Tian, coming to you from the World Economic Forum 2019. When in Davos, it is not difficult to notice that China is almost at the center of discussion in every conversation, whether it is geopolitical issues or the future growth of the world economy and some of the reform agenda China has for the future. For example, the reform of the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises. And that's why we're going to focus on this topic today by inviting three leaders coming from the state-owned enterprises. First of all, let's meet Mr. Xiao Yaqing, Chairman of the China State Asset Supervision and Administration Commission. Mr. Xiao, what a pleasure to see you here in Davos. 2018, you pledged SOE will speed up its reform. But exactly how much? Is it small steps, brisk walking, or running?
You mentioned the word reform. For state-owned enterprises, reform should always take place because we, like any other company, we need to follow the rules of running a business and the rules of the market. So for us SOEs, the goal of reform should be constantly suited to changes in the market. The direction of the reform has been set, but that doesn't mean reform will be accomplished with one stroke. Systemic changes will not take place overnight. We have already determined the direction and the goal of our reform in the long term, and that is internationalization, marketization, and legalization. We will push forward step by step, but each enterprise is unique. We need to adjust the goals for each enterprise according to its characteristics, its position, its role, and the changes in its operating environment. So each year, we will make some progress. Then over time, it will snowball. So we should always keep reform in mind.
Talk about it, every company. I thought SASAC would say something and then every Chinese state-owned enterprises have to follow.
So this is what we need to clarify to the outside world and to the public. The general direction for each enterprise is the same, and that is to deepen reform. But our reform also needs to be practical. This means we need to look at the specifics of each company. We need to combine a goal-oriented approach with a problem-oriented one. We need to compare a company's existing problems with the demands of the market, and the gap is what needs to be fixed. There are differences between businesses, and there are differences between industries, so we don't set the same requirement for all companies. We pursue reforms that are practical and based on a company's own history, own problems, and own goals.
There are two words. Which one is more important to you, Mr. Xiao? One is patience. The other is being brave.
You've asked a rather difficult question. It depends on which phase we are in. For example, for the current stage of reform, I think we need more courage, the courage to reform. And you not only need courage, you also need skills. So I think for managers, especially the managers of SOEs, it is in fact not an easy task. And that's why I'm happy to see the changes that have been taking place in 2018 and in the last few years. It is because people have the courage to reform that we have made some achievements. If we look into the future, we should acquire more courage to carry out reform. Only that way we will be able to hasten the pace of our progress and to raise our competitiveness.
Talking about speed up the reform, Mr. Xiao, I noticed that since the very first day of 2019, you give a series of speeches and discussion sessions with your colleagues from the state-owned enterprises. You are talking about, Mr. Xiao, from managing assets to managing capital. Many wonder, what does that mean? in this stage of state-owned enterprises reform?
We have worked on regulation of enterprises to the regulation of assets and towards the regulation of capital. This is a process of reform and progress. The shift of our focus towards capital regulation marks more attention on promoting efficiency and effectiveness of enterprises as well as their return and asset quality. It also means we put more focus on liquidity and rate of return of assets. Such efforts spell out new challenge to regulators and new requirements to enterprise operators. From the regulation of assets to the regulation of capital, a change of one word actually heralds significant transformation. I think this is a process of marketization and internationalization in our reform process.
Debt is an issue. What role is the issue of debt playing in this process?
The debt issue you've talked about is a very sensitive topic. It is also a key concern. I think the debt of the enterprises under our supervision stays generally at a rational level given their development, openness, and further goals. From a prudent perspective, we think that debt should be curbed within current levels. A reduction of debt is preferred, but stability is the priority. Then we should allow for the realities of different industries. Sectors such as telecommunication and 5G definitely need more debt. More leverage can create more opportunities for such sectors. For innovation industries, they need more investments to gain more development. But other sectors foresee more risks. Their investment decisions are left with pending issues. Then the debt level for such sectors will be lowered. Therefore, the leverage issue should be resolved in respect of the type of enterprises. There is no one-size-fits-all answer in regard to whether the debt should be reduced or increased. We must consider different sectors' conditions and market opportunities. In general, the leverage of state-owned enterprises has been declining in a stable way.
Mr. Xiao, even though you noticed that in the headlines of some media coverage, that issue about state-owned enterprises, some say it's crucial when they look at the future direction of the Chinese economy. How do you see that? Are they fair comments?
I learn a lot, though there is more than just one day's time.
You have a lot of bilaterals every day.
China's economic growth has attracted a lot of attention, with both confidence and also worries. I think this means China's economy is growing faster and faster and has made more and more contributions to world growth, so it accounts for a larger proportion in global economy. I think this is understandable. Personally speaking, I'm confident in China's economic development. We are developing despite huge total economy volume, but there is still a huge gap in terms of per capita index. Though we rank top in the world in terms of gross sales in many fields, we still have a long way to go with real high-end ones. Many Chinese enterprises are in the world's top 500 list, but they lag far behind the world's top enterprises when it comes to profit capability, level of benefits, and effectiveness. So, there are still many opportunities when we compare these with Chinese people's wishes to live a better life. There is still huge growing space for energy consumption, the volume of cars, air conditioners, as well as other home appliances owned by families, and also average personal income. We also need to keep pace with environmental protection, so there is still a huge market, which has great potential for China to keep the economy growing steadily.
But Mr. Xiao, also people talk about the geopolitics, particularly given what's going on right now between China and the United States, for example. So how do you see these ever-changing factors having an impact on China's economy?
Definitely, such huge uncertainties in the world will have a great impact on the Chinese economy. People will have an expectation for the future. If the forecast is stable, people will feel relieved and want to invest and do businesses. Just as the old Chinese saying goes, harmony is precious and harmony brings wealth. Good and stable expectations will be good for all. So personally speaking, we should advocate economic globalization, and such globalization will bring far more benefits to the frontrunners than developers. So we think the process of globalization is irreversible, but twists and turns are normal during the process. We should do our own things well first, including quality, benefit, and management.
So you mean China is prepared for it?
Our enterprises should do and manage own things well at first. Enterprise managers are hard to avoid and control impact by uncertainties in the world. All we can do is to do our best.
Mr. Xiao, I want to ask you several questions in different directions. One is about Belt and Road Initiative. Many, you can see, in the World Economic Forum, they're very enthusiastic about the idea, but they also have a lot of questions about the idea. So, to you, what is this Belt and Road Initiative, particularly the role of the state-owned enterprises in this regard?
President Xi proposed the Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past 5 years, I feel that more and more people are responding to this initiative, and more countries, regions, and companies benefit from it, including Chinese enterprises, partners, and project leaders. I think the Belt and Road Initiative is a long-term and strategic initiative, so this is a process for everyone to jointly explore and jointly develop and share the outcome. It is a long-term strategic project. It depends on the strength of these companies that are involved in the Belt and Road, such as the funds, the technology, the demonstration of your ability in all aspects. Therefore, in the process, I've seen that many special enterprises are participating in the Belt and Road project. But actually, the cooperation between the BRI and local enterprises, local companies, and various enterprises is much more. And the Belt and Road Initiative overall is very successful. I think that the more I look back, the more I see it, the more I feel its success.
Another thing, since we talk about reform and opening up, and also connectivity, it's about what kind of opening up. I remember in one of the speeches you give earlier this year, you talk about high quality opening up. How should we interpret that? And what is going to be the role of state-owned enterprises? Are you going to help with the high quality or the other way around?
Actually, at the beginning of 2017, Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered an important speech on opening up with high quality to the world in Davos. For the high quality opening up of central enterprises and state enterprises, the first thing to know is what the international market needs. What are the rules of the international market? Where are the partners in the international market? And what is the size of the international market? These are the basis for everything in the opening up to a higher level on the original basis. In the process of opening up, on the one hand, we learn experience from the past. On the other hand, we learn from the developed economies, especially the business practices, investment behaviors, and management behaviors of the advanced companies in the international market. And then it makes us able to align with the best companies in the world and strive to become a world-class enterprise. This is the most fundamental problem of our high-quality opening up.